You know, at the end, if the only thing I'm known for is the guy who died in the Packers schedule release video from all those cheese curds, I think that's a pretty good legacy. There's no escape. Ah! Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, a podcast where you don't have to be Packers fan, but it sure does up. I'm your host, Tom.
Can't you count faster?
You're one mother-loving ticket short. That was a puppet claymation. That was cool. Grossi. And today we are going to be breaking down the Packers schedule and predicting the record that the Green Bay Packers will have for the 2026 NFL season. Of course, last Thursday, it was the Super Bowl for all the social media coordinators of all the NFL teams. And the Packers, they worked with the animators behind Robot Chicken. I got to voice a couple of lines with that, which was a pretty surreal experience considering I grew up watching Robot Chicken on Adult Swim almost every single weeknight. So yeah, that was pretty damn cool. You can go and check that video out if you are interested. But taking a look at this Packers schedule, I feel pretty good, especially after looking at some of the other NFC North team schedules. Because, yeah, like the Lions, man, that early bye is not a good time. And while the Packers actually wind up having a shorter bye, I really like what happens after that point because they kind of get like 2 weeks off. And on top of that, they finish the last 4 out of their 5 games at home, and it will be in the cold weather. So hopefully, I say this, hopefully that is going to benefit the Packers because we're going to have a good defense and good run game this year, right? Right? But let's talk about this schedule before we dive into the nitty gritty. First of all, the Green Bay Packers have 6 primetime games, which is usually the maximum amount of primetime games that you can have in an NFL regular season. So yeah, the Packers are still a hot ticket. However, the Rams do have 1 more as they have 7 primetime games this year, which is absolutely insane. But the most important thing is out of those 6 primetime games, 5 of them are at home. So I think that's a pretty big advantage for the Packers. On top of that, they are going to be opening on the road in back-to-back road games, first against the Vikings and then against the Jets. But as I mentioned before, I think the real big advantage for the Packers is the last 4 out of 5 games are played at home. So again, Packers are going to be able to have that home field advantage, be playing in the cold. They should be used to it at that point. And so hopefully that's going to give them a pretty big advantage down the stretch. Now, before we dive into week 1, I've talked about my expectations for the Packers as I still think they are going to be a very competitive team this year. Obviously, they got the 7th seed again last year for the 3rd year in a row before getting bounced in the wild card round. Who they lost against, I don't know. I just don't remember that part of the season. But most importantly, I think the Packers are going to be contending for a Super Bowl if everybody can be healthy. We need to see what that defense is going to look like, right? We'll see what that secondary is going to look like specifically. The Packers finally addressed corner by going and getting Cisse and Domani Jackson, so hopefully that is going to help. I know they completely rebuilt that safety group a few years ago, so it is possible for them to do it at corner, but the most important thing is once they're able to get that pass rush going, which hopefully it is going to be very good this year under Jonathan Gannon, then that's going to make that secondary look a bit better because I know at times last year it wasn't so great, and who knows, we might have an entirely different corner room after this season ends. But Micah Parsons is expected to miss at least the first 4 games of the season. He could start the year on the PUP list, which means he could practice after 2 weeks, but he wouldn't be able to see any action until after week 4. And ultimately, I don't think this is the worst lineup of games to not have Micah Parsons. The first 4 games, they're at Minnesota, they're at New Jersey, and then they're going up against the Falcons on Thursday Night Football, and then they're at Tampa Bay against the Buccaneers in week 4. So when you look at these first 4 games, there's a couple of them that stand out that could be challenging. First, let's talk about the purple incarnation of Satan, the Minnesota Vikings. Yes, the Minnesota Vikings beat the Packers in week 18 as we had Clayton Tune out there, who is no longer on the team. I don't think he's in the NFL anymore, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that was a very ugly game. And the Vikings should still have a very good defense. Brian Flores got extended this past offseason, and their defense was one of the best in football by the end of last season. The problem is, what is going on with their offense? Of course, they have some phenomenal pieces. Justin Jefferson's one of the best wide receivers in the league. You got Addison, who's a great weapon, TJ Hawkinson when he's available. And that offensive line definitely has been improved over the last few years. The issue is Aaron Jones is getting a little bit older, but they went and got Jordan Mason, who I think is a very good running back. But the biggest question mark is, of course, who is going to be under center. We saw JJ McCarthy get some reps last year, and then he got injured, and then there was times where he did not look good. And then, of course, they went and signed Kyler Murray this offseason, and so we just have no idea who their starting quarterback is going to be. And so I can see this being a challenge for the Packers. One, just starting on the road, it's against a division rival, and you're going up against a very good defense. But again, I just don't know what the ceiling is for the Vikings offense. And so that gives me a little bit more optimism the Packers should be able to come away with a win against the Vikings. Again, I could see this being a very close, low-scoring game if the Vikings defense is on one, but I feel confident in our defense to be able to stop whatever the Vikings are going to throw at us. And so because of that, I think the Packers should be able to get a win early on. Meanwhile, you go to week 2 and take a look at that Jets game, and yeah, the Jets are kind of in a similar boat. Their defense is not as good as the Minnesota Vikings. It was a few years ago, but the Jets, they haven't had an interception in over a year. And my biggest concern is that they're going up against the Titans week 1 and they don't get an interception week 1, but they get an interception against Jordan Love. And that's their first one that they get in a calendar year. And I just... I don't want to be on the internet if that happens. But playing on the road at MetLife, the Jets have had the Packers' number at times over the past few seasons, so I'm definitely not looking past them. But I still think the jury's out on Aaron Glenn on how successful he's going to be as a head coach. And again, whoever the hell their starting quarterback is going to be, it's really going to come down to, can the Packers stop the run with Breece Hall and go and move that ball against their defense? I think they can, and so I think they'll be able to knock off the Jets. And then week 3, you have the Falcons on a short week on Thursday Night Football, and this is the Packers' home opener. And what's interesting about the first 3 games is all 3 of these teams have question marks at quarterback. You have the Vikings with McCarthy and Kyler Murray. You have the Jets just as an organization. And for the Falcons, Michael Penix was banged up last season, and they wound up signing Tua in the offseason. And as of right now, they are splitting reps between Tua and Michael Penix. I imagine Penix is going to get the start as long as he is healthy. But the Falcons are a really interesting team because their pass rush definitely got better last year. And there were times where they looked like a really damn good football team. I feel like this has happened a couple of times with the Falcons of like, oh man, you have Robinson running really well. And as long as Penix is able to move the ball, that defense is looking good. Their secondary got a big boost over the past couple of seasons. I think this is going to be a challenge, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons give the Packers a bunch of problems. But again, it just comes down to the quarterback position and which QB is going to be playing and are they going to be able to be successful. I think if the Packers are able to stop the run, which is going to be the biggest problem on Thursday night against Bijan Robinson because he's just an excellent player, if they're able to stop him, I think the Packers should be able to get the win. But the Packers offensive line is definitely going to get tested by this pass rush, so don't be surprised if this is one of those wonky games that the Packers are unable to hold on to. But as of right now, I think the Packers should be able to get the win over the Falcons. And then to round out the first 4 weeks, you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And yeah, this hopefully will be the last game that we will not see Micah Parsons. Tucker Kraft, I mean, listen, he's chugging beers at concerts in Lambeau, so hopefully he is ready to go. So I'm not really too worried about him. Hopefully Devontae Wyatt is back. But this could be the last game without Micah Parsons. And this game I actually have as a Packers loss. And there's a couple reasons why. One, we'll see how good Bane is because, man, the hype of him coming out of school, there is a lot. So we'll see what that pass rush looks like. But while the Buccaneers did not finish the season the way that they wanted to, they were banged up last year. Baker Mayfield, we were talking about him as an MVP caliber quarterback throughout the season last year until things just completely and totally fell off. And I just feel like the Bucs are one of those really gritty teams. And on top of that, they have receivers like Ibuka who can take advantage of our secondary. I know Mike Evans is no longer there.
Imika Egbegbo.
But I just feel like this is going to be a problem for the Packers. They usually don't play too well in Florida. It's going to be in the beginning of October, so it's going to be still like relatively hot and humid. And I just feel like this is one of those games where the Packers are going to have a tough time. And so for that, I'm going to put the first loss for the Packers against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road, and then they got some big time games. Then week 5, the Packers don't have to wait months to face against the Chicago Bears like they did last season. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm just going to split the series here. With the Bears, I'm very curious what kind of team they're going to be this year. The Bears definitely took some big leaps forward last year, obviously knocking off the Packers in their last 2 encounters, including one in the playoffs, both comeback victories, and they went toe-to-toe with the LA Rams. Caleb Williams just throwing up a ball that somehow resulted in a touchdown. I still don't know how it was. And yeah, they were just a good team last year. They were involved in some really, really close games, and there were times where they just didn't show up until the fourth quarter, but they almost made it to the NFC Championship game. And so they deserve some credit for that. I'm going to have the Packers win this one in Lambeau Field, and I'm going to have them lose against the Bears on Christmas Day. Again, the hope is that Micah Parsons will be back for this game, but if he is not, then maybe we just swap this and they'll beat the Bears on Christmas Day and they'll lose week 5 at Lambeau. But either way, I can definitely see the series getting split. And so because of that, I'm just going to do 1 win and 1 loss. Then for the Packers' second primetime game, you got the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys playing in Sunday Night Football against the Packers once again. They did this last season in which the game ended in a tie. And please, for the love of God, don't end in a tie this year. The Cowboys definitely should be improved from where they were last year. Obviously, they have George Pickens, and CeeDee Lamb is a phenomenal wide receiver, so that offense should be pretty potent. But they really started to rebuild that defense in the offseason and, of course, in the draft. And if their pass rush and secondary is just even better from where it was last year, Dallas could be a pretty damn balanced team. The good news is this is being played at home and it's week 6, so hopefully Micah Parsons will be playing at this point, and I do think he will be a difference maker in this game. Of course, going up against his former team, he had a sack against Dak, even though he didn't lose any yards. Trust me, Scooter, I know, but he prevented a touchdown, so that was really nice, but he's going to definitely have a chip on his shoulder going up against his former team. And yeah, I didn't see this one going either way. If the Cowboys defense is remarkably improved, then I could see the Cowboys winning this football game. But I do think the fact that this is being played at home, and if Josh Jacobs is getting things going early, I do think the Packers should be able to win this football game. But I put this as a complete and total toss-up. And all I know is that our secondary is definitely going to be tested. So I like to think that the Packers should be able to win this game, but yeah, it definitely is going to be a tough one. Then week 7 and 8, you got back-to-back games against the Gatos. You got the first game against the Lions. This is going to be played in Detroit, and the Lions are a very intriguing team this year because are they going to be where they were last year, or are they going to look like they did a couple seasons ago when they went to the NFC Championship game? They dealt with a ton of injuries on the O-line, on their defense last year, and they really couldn't get things going. On top of that, they lost David Montgomery in the offseason, which I am very happy about, but Gibbs is still a very good player. And again, we are making the assumption that Micah Parsons is going to be back. And the Packers, they were able to take care of business against the Lions in both games last year. And I think now it's up to the Lions to just prove that they're the team of a few seasons back. And so because of that, I'm going to give the Packers a win here. Again, we'll have a better idea when we actually see the Lions take the field. But I feel like with Lions fans, you're just waiting to see what identity this team is going to have this year. And the Packers, heck, they were able to beat them even when they weren't at their best last year. I think they'll be able to do it again. Then week 8, you got the Panthers on another short week on Thursday Night Football, the Packers' third primetime game. The Panthers were able to win against the Packers last year. Rico Dowdle ran all over them. Bryce Young did next to nothing, and they still were able to beat us. So yeah, that was very frustrating. I think the Packers should be able to knock off the Panthers this year, but the Panthers are in a very interesting spot. This is a very make or break year for Bryce Young. If the Panthers are able to have a good run game, obviously they've added some weapons. The Panthers offense could be really interesting, as just is that entire NFC South, but we'll see what kind of pressure Bryce Young is going to be under. I know the Rams weren't able to get after him a ton of times, but they are stocking up on that offensive line, which I think is only going to ultimately help Carolina, but I do think the Packers should be able to get a win on a short week here. And then after some time off, you got week 9 against the defending AFC champions, the New England Patriots. This is going to be a really interesting game. It's being played in New England. I feel like the Packers haven't played the Patriots, especially in New England, in a hot minute. But this is an interesting game because I think the Packers have a significant advantage going up against Drake May's offensive line. Obviously, they added pieces in the draft to try and add some protection to Drake May, but Drake May is the most sacked quarterback in playoff history after this past postseason, beating out Joe Burrow. And if Micah Parsons is there and Lucas Van Ness is picking up where he left off last year before he got hurt, this could be a long day for Drake May. However, the Packers are going to have to deal with a couple things. One, a good run game in which Henderson could potentially run all over them and break one. We'll see how the Packers' run defense is. And two, they're going up against a pretty damn good defense, which definitely showed up in the playoffs. And that's where I think the Packers could have some problems. If the Packers are unable to move the ball effectively, I can see this being a low-scoring game going in the Patriots' favor. And so because of that, I am going to give the Patriots the win here. Again, I can see this being like a 10-6 ball game if both defenses just lock down, and maybe it's just going to be whoever makes a mistake. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Patriots getting the win here, giving the Packers either their second or third loss, depending on what happens with the Cowboys. But yeah, Patriots, they've sometimes been a thorn in the Packers side. I imagine might happen here. You just got to hope one of their big guys doesn't run back a kick return like they did a few years ago. I still remember. Then week 10 facing the Vikings at home. The Packers should be able to get a win here, and the Vikings could definitely surprise people if Kyler Murray is a really good fit there and KOC has kind of revamped him a little bit, or if JJ McCarthy is doing well. But I think the Packers should be able to get the win over the Vikings. And then week 11, the Packers have a bye week. I am a big fan of this bye week because I hate early buys. Because usually when the season gets a little long in the tooth, these guys are dealing with a ton of injuries. You saw this last year. And so giving them some time to rest later in the season, I am always a fan. However, this is a shorter bye. While they're not going to be playing in week 11, they are going to be playing week 12 on Wednesday, Thanksgiving Eve, against the LA Rams. And I think this is going to be a real tough game. They're playing on the road at SoFi, going up against Matthew Stafford again and a very high-powered offense. We'll see if it's lost a step from where they were last year. But just the wide receiver duos of having Puka and, of course, Devontae Adams going up against his former team, I think this is going to be a really tough test for this Packers defense. Hopefully the pass rush is able to get after Matthew Stafford. We'll see how mobile he's going to be this year and how that protection is. But yeah, I'm giving the Packers a loss here. I just think there's too many things working against them. Flying into the West Coast, it's a little bit of a shorter bye, and going up against one of the best teams in the NFC, I'm going to give the Packers a loss. However, they are actually going to have more time off between their week 12 and week 13 game than they are during their bye week. So in my opinion, this kind of works out as they kind of get two mini buys here near the end of the season. And week 13 against the Saints, after this game, they only have one more away game. And so yeah, I think this is pretty beneficial for the Packers. Going up against the Saints, I know the Saints have a ton of hype. We're all going to see what Shuck can do this year, and that offense could be explosive. We'll see what their run game looks like, but I'm really curious to see what their passing game is going to look like. Shuck is obviously a very young quarterback, but we're going to get an extended look at him. And I could see this potentially being a bit of a trap game. We'll see how the Saints defense looks, but I'm going to give the Packers a win in week 13. I think they'll have a bounce back victory after coming off this mini bye, and they'll be able to take care of business on the road. Then the final 5 games of the season, and it is a gauntlet that the Packers are going to go through. Starting off on Sunday Night Football, they're going to be taking on Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. This game is one of my most anticipated games of the 2026 season because I think that just this could be magic. December football, prime time, Lambeau Field, Bills, Packers. Come on, man. It doesn't get much better than that. And I think that this is going to be a really interesting game in terms of just what both offenses are going to do. Of course, you have Josh Allen on one end who could always air it out, and they're also going to be adding DJ Moore to the mix, and Packers fans know all about DJ Moore. And on top of that, James Cook is a phenomenal running back, having great back-to-back seasons, and so the Packers' run defense is definitely going to be tested. Now, you flip on the other side and you look at the Bills' defense. At times, they definitely struggled last year. Their secondary was doing well, but their pass rush wasn't doing so hot. So it'll be interesting to see how the Packers can move the ball against this Bills defense. But this game, I can see just turning into a shootout, and just whoever has the ball last winds up winning. Of course, the last time we saw the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen turned the ball over a ton. I don't know if our defense is going to be able to do that because we are not the Denver Broncos defense. I mean, hopefully we're close to that. But yeah, this one I have as a loss for the Packers just because they don't play the Bills very often, and I can just see Josh Allen potentially making them pay, whether it's with his mobility or it's just James Cook having a really good day on the ground. And so because of that, I'm going to give the loss to the Packers here on Sunday Night Football. I think it could be a close game, and I definitely think the Packers can win, especially if our pass rush, again, is able to cause some problems and they're able to contain James Cook. But yeah, against the Bills, I got the L. Then week 15, welcome back Malik Willis and Jeff Hafley as the Miami Dolphins come to town. The Dolphins, not expected to be a phenomenal team this year. They did wind up re-signing Devin Achane to a 3-year contract, and I think that's going to really help. And if they are a run-forward team this year, I think they can definitely build an offensive identity around that. However, they are ripping off the Band-Aid in this rebuild. They traded away Jalen Waddle. There's a bunch of guys gone. Tyreek Hill's no longer on the team. And so this feels like a team that is going to probably be a pain in the ass for the Packers just because that's the way that it is. Malik Willis, I mean, man, I wish him absolutely nothing but the best, and I think Hafley's going to be a good head coach over in Miami, and I can see them trying real damn hard for this game. Not that other teams don't try every single week, because whatever. But yeah, I could see this being a problem, especially with Malik Willis's mobility. And again, if Achane is just having an incredible season on the ground, this could be a problem for the Packers. But I don't trust that defense. They definitely added some speed to that secondary in the draft, but I think the Packers offense should be able to put up enough points and at least contain Malik Willis. And so because of that, I have the Packers back on the board with a W. And then week 16, we already talked about on Christmas Day against the Chicago Bears. This is their final away game of the regular season. I had the Packers splitting with the Bears. So again, you could either call this one a win if they have Micah Parsons, or you call the one in week 5 a win. It is possible that the Packers wind up sweeping. I mean, I guess it's possible that the Bears wind up sweeping. They have won their last 2 matchups against us, even though they've both been comeback victories and win without Micah Parsons. And I'm still not angry. Totally not bitter. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun series. We'll see how Caleb Williams does this year. Maybe he'll throw for 4,000 yards. But yeah, that offense should still be pretty damn explosive. Their defense was insanely opportunistic. They added to that safety unit. So yeah, I think that they're going to wind up splitting this season. Then week 17, damn, this gauntlet continues. They are going to be at home against the Houston Texans. And this game, December, Lambeau Field, this game is going to determine a lot about the Packers because the Texans offense, a lot of question marks right now. They should have a much better run game this year because they had no Joe Mixon last season, but they added David Montgomery, and the Packers know all about David Montgomery. But the question mark, of course, is about CJ Stroud, who had an abysmal end to last season, definitely had some struggles. His offensive line didn't do him any favors. He had no run game. His wide receivers were injured, but still did not look good. And if CJ Stroud is able to get back to his rookie season, I think the Texans are a Super Bowl caliber team. And speaking of, that defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense. And why I think the Packers are going to get really tested here is there are not going to be many defenses they're going to play against that are going to be as tough as the Houston Texans. And so playing in the cold at Lambeau, you better be able to move that football, because when it's cold, that usually favors 2 things: good defenses and good run games. If the Texans have both of those, I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans are able to get a win here. I just worry about the Packers' offensive line a little bit, but where the Packers could take advantage is generating some turnovers if CJ Stroud is still struggling next season. So I definitely see an avenue where the Packers can win this game. But yeah, I've just been really high on the Texans. I was high on them last season. So yeah, I'll give the Packers a loss here. And then finally, week 18 against the Lions. I mean, hopefully, we get to sit all our starters because we're the number 1 seed. Oh, I can only dream. But this is going to be a really fun game. I mean, in 2022, that was not a fun game at Lambeau Field, when the Lions came in and won against Aaron Rodgers, his last game as a Packer. Yeah, that was not fun. Again, it's just totally up in the air what kind of team the Lions are going to look like this year. I do think the Packers should be able to get this win because Micah Parsons will be back at this point. It's week 18, and the Packers could be playing for positioning in the playoffs, but then again, so could the Lions. We'll see how explosive that offense is going to be, and again, how healthy everyone's going to be. But I think the question mark is really about that offensive line and how sturdy that's going to be for Detroit. But here, I do have the Packers getting a win. I could see this definitely turning into a shootout if both defenses decide to take week 18 off. But yeah, I feel pretty confident about the Packers here. And so taking a look at this schedule as a whole, I see the Packers around an 11-6 team. There's a couple of games that stand out to me that I think are going to be really challenging. That Buccaneers game is going to be tough. Going up against the Bears on Christmas, the Rams game, the Bills, the Texans. Those are some of the matchups that stand out that could be problematic for the Packers. But you also look at that Cowboys game too. And again, depending on how the Lions are going to be, that could be problematic. Oh, and they also are on the road against the Patriots. Again, defending AFC champs. That could be problematic. So ultimately, I think it's going to come down to a couple things. What is the injury timeline for guys like Micah Parsons, Devontae Wyatt, and Tucker Kraft? Because if those guys are back sooner rather than later, they're doing all right. If some of those guys are not back until after week 4, I still think this schedule is pretty kind to the Packers because they're able to kind of like dip their toes in the water. I know they have back-to-back road games, but going up against two teams that kind of have some quarterback woes, not the worst thing in the world. But I do know that this Packers team is definitely going to be tested near the end of the season because it's a bit of a gauntlet that they go through going up against the Bills and away at the Bears, the Texans, and then even the Lions at the end of the year. So the Packers will definitely be battle-hardened and ready for the playoffs if their record is good enough. But as I mentioned, ending your last 4 out of 5 games at home in December, yeah, that's pretty damn good. So I like the Packers schedule as of right now. It's just going to be a matter of what this team looks like this year. And for that, we have to wait until September. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. What do you think the Packers' ceiling is? What do you think their floor is? I do think that they should be able to win at least 10 games here, and they think they can go up as high as maybe 13 wins. But as always, let me know what you think. You guys saw me at TomGrossiComedy.com, and a big shout and thank you to all the Patreon and YouTube members for supporting this channel. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack, go.